Bernard Lawrence Madoff, a name synonymous with deceit, betrayal, and colossal financial fraud. His story is one that will make you question the very core of the financial system. This man single-handedly orchestrated the largest Ponzi scheme in history, leaving investors devastated and questioning how it all went so terribly wrong. But what's even more shocking is how he managed to keep up this facade for so long. Join us today as we unravel the intricate web of lies that Bernie Madoff spun and explore the factors that allowed him to fool investors for decades. Prepare to be astounded as we delve into the mind of a master manipulator who defrauded billions from some of the richest people in the world. You won't believe the lengths he went to keep his scam afloat. So stay tuned until the end of this video to find out how Bernie Madoff's greed knew no bounds. Ponzi scheme. Have you ever heard of a Ponzi scheme? It's basically when someone makes money by taking money from new investors and putting it towards the promised returns for earlier investors. But there's no real income-generating activity, just a whole lot of smoke and mirrors. Well, that's exactly what Bernard Madoff was doing. For years, he lured in wealthy investors, promising them sky-high returns on their investments. But behind the scenes, he was just shuffling around money from new investors to pay off the old ones. It's a classic con artist move, but Madoff took it to a whole new level. When Madoff was finally caught, the full extent of his fraud was revealed. He had been running a massive Ponzi scheme that had taken billions of dollars from investors. Many of his victims were left penniless, wiping out their life savings in a matter of months. What makes this story even more unbelievable is that Madoff was a well-respected member of society. He was a former chairman of the Nasdaq stock market and was considered to be an expert in the field of finance. He was also a big fundraiser for the Democratic Party and was close personal friends with many powerful people in Washington, D.C. But despite his status and reputation, Madoff was a fraudster who lived a life of luxury by preying on the hard-earned money of everyday people. Wall Street fraud. Bernie Madoff's fraudulent investment advisory business operated for decades before his arrest in 2008. As a result, many institutional investors like banks, pension funds, and university endowments lost billions of dollars in the collapse of his Ponzi scheme. Madoff's crimes shook the financial world and led to calls for greater regulation of investment advisors and stricter punishment for white-collar criminals. The fallout from Madoff's fraud continues to be felt today as many investors are still trying to recover their losses. The scandal also highlighted the greed and lack of ethics that can exist within the financial industry. Madoff was driven by a desire for wealth and power, and he was willing to do whatever it took to maintain his lavish lifestyle. He created a false persona of a successful investor and used his connections on Wall Street to convince investors that they were making sound investments. However, it was all a carefully constructed lie. And when the truth was finally revealed, it left investors devastated. Financial scam. Bernie Madoff's financial scam was one of the most audacious and elaborate schemes in history. To lure in investors, he promised them impossibly high returns of 10 to 14% every year, far above the average market returns. He claimed to have developed a unique investment strategy that could generate these high returns consistently, attracting thousands of investors who were looking to grow their wealth quickly. However, these promised returns were nothing but a mirage. Madoff was not investing his clients' money in legitimate businesses or securities, as he had claimed. Instead, he was using a Ponzi scheme to pay off earlier investors with the money he received from new investors. He perpetuated this scam for decades, paying off existing investors with new investors' money while pocketing huge commissions for himself. It wasn't until the financial market started to crumble in 2008 that the scam started to unravel. When investors began to panic and withdraw their money, Madoff didn't have enough funds to go around. It was then that the scale of his fraud was exposed, leaving investors shocked and devastated. Billionaire loss. Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors of our time, lost millions of dollars in Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme, which is a staggering sum for anyone, let alone someone as wealthy and experienced as Buffett. In fact, Buffett was one of Madoff's earliest and biggest clients, having entrusted him with millions of dollars in the early 1960s. Buffett had met Madoff through a mutual friend and was impressed by his reputation as a successful investor and his connections on Wall Street. Over the years, Buffett continued to invest with Madoff and even referred other investors to him, such as the famous baseball player Sandy Koufax. However, in 2008, when Madoff's scheme finally collapsed, Buffett was shocked to discover that he had lost millions of dollars. Despite his sophisticated investment strategies and keen eye for spotting profitable companies, he had fallen victim to one of the biggest financial scams in history. It was a humiliating setback for Buffett, who had prided himself on his ability to avoid such pitfalls. He was widely mocked by the media, and his reputation as an investing guru was called into question. But Buffett's response to his loss was both graceful and pragmatic. He acknowledged that he had been fooled by Madoff's charm and charisma and vowed to learn from the experience. Rather than wallowing in self-pity, Buffett focused on rebuilding his portfolio and continuing to invest in promising companies. And in the long run, his resilience paid off. He went on to achieve even greater success and cemented his legacy as one of the most successful investors of all time. How did he do it? Bernie Madoff managed to fool investors for decades by employing a combination of charisma, manipulation, and sheer audacity. Here are some key factors that allowed him to perpetrate his massive financial scam. Charismatic personality. Madoff was known for his charming personality and was able to build trust with potential investors. He was a skilled salesman and was able to convince people that he had their best interests at heart. Sophisticated facade. Madoff cultivated an image of sophistication and success. He dressed well, drove luxury cars, and vacationed in exclusive locations. This image made him seem trustworthy and capable. Complex investment strategy. Madoff claimed to use a complex investment strategy that generated high returns with low risk. This complexity was designed to impress potential investors and make them feel that they were getting access to something special. Connections on Wall Street. Madoff had connections on Wall Street and was respected by many in the financial industry. This gave him credibility and made investors more likely to trust him. Audacity. Perhaps most importantly, Madoff was willing to be audacious and take risks that others were not. He was willing to make big trades and take on big clients, which helped him to build his reputation and generate returns that attracted more investors. Regulatory loopholes. Madoff was also able to take advantage of regulatory loopholes and avoid the kind of scrutiny that might have uncovered his fraud earlier. Who were his victims? Bernie Madoff's victims were primarily wealthy individuals and institutions that fell for his promises of high returns and his sophisticated investment strategy. Among his high-profile victims were celebrities like Kevin Bacon and John Malkovich, as well as major institutions like the Texas Teachers' Retirement System and the Royal Bank of Scotland. Many of Madoff's victims were sophisticated investors who should have been able to spot the signs of a Ponzi scheme. But Madoff's charm and charisma, as well as his impressive track record, made him seem trustworthy. These investors lost not only their entire investments, but also a significant portion of their net worth. Some victims were wiped out completely and were forced to sell their homes or declare bankruptcy. What's the lesson here? The lesson from Bernie Madoff's massive financial scam is that even the most sophisticated investors need to be cautious and do their due diligence. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment, and always be wary of promises of high returns with little or no risk. It's also important to remember that no one is immune to financial fraud, and even the most successful investors can fall prey to it. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other videos about the biggest financial scandals and the most infamous con artists. We've got plenty of content that will keep you on the edge of your seat. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button and never miss out on the latest updates. Thanks for watching.